Gray plastic. We all had it. We all continue to have it. And it always represents something, especially in the zeitgeist of miniature wargaming and all that goes on there. There's a stigma about gray plastic and a feeling about gray plastic. So you have, Slay the Gray, you have, Facing the Gray Tide. There's always a sense that the gray plastic is what is haunting all of us as miniature hobbyists. So whether it's people that pay to have their models painted, whether it's people that just play with the gray plastic, people who play with proxies so that they're a weird colored plastic. There's the people who do the 3-color minimum to make the requirements for a tournament. All of it hinges around the pieces of gray plastic. But for a lot of people, myself included, the reason that you have gray plastic signifies something. It signifies an inability to put paint on that plastic. Because if I had my preference, all of my models, all the models that you've seen around that are still just kits, all the models these models that you see in front of you, they would be painted. I don't think that they would necessarily be painted to a golden demon winning. I don't think I was going to be bringing home the Slayer sword anytime soon. But they represent something in me that keeps them as gray plastic. And I know 3 models being gray plastic but fully built doesn't seem like much. But for me it is. Unless I am mass building an entire army to speed paint like you saw with my sisters, usually what I do is I build a model and then I paint a model. And for me, the fact that I have 3 fully built models, 3 models that could be used in a game for me in a battle report, means something. It means that I have been struck by something that I have often find myself being struck by, and something that holds me back from completing projects, from doing what I want to do with the hobby, with my models. And that's anxiety about painting. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoy painting. I enjoy the act of painting. I think there's part of me that enjoys having a painted model better than the act of painting, but I do enjoy it, and I'm not looking to go and pay someone else to paint the models for me. But there are aspects of painting that can be overwhelming. And there are different aspects that might affect me, that might affect someone else when it comes to anxiety over painting. There's a lot of people out there who just don't think they're good at painting, don't think that they can do it. And to that, the usual answer is nobody's good when you first start. Nobody. Some people are better than others, but no one's really good when you first start. You paint models and you do what you have to keep progressing. And you have choices on what you do with those models once you have painted them and once you are progressing. But no one starts good. But there's that initial hurdle that people look at models, and usually the ones they're looking at are the Slayer Sword winners, the Crystal Brush winners, and they go, there's no way I could do that. And the answer is yes, you will not be able to do that the first model you paint. It's just pure fact. It's just not going to happen. But that keeps people from wanting to paint, wanting to do a major aspect of this hobby that they could find entertaining. If you've painted models before and you dislike the process and you don't enjoy it, then yeah, don't do it. I'm always a proponent of making sure that you are the primary focus of this hobby, because that is what it's supposed to be. It is meant to be fun. It is meant to be something enjoyable. And at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying it, you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be doing it for other people. You shouldn't do what other people think you should do or expect you to do. This hobby is yours, and you have to do what you want with it. So if you do not enjoy painting, then sure, if you have the money, go pay someone else to paint it for you. Or if you don't want to if you don't want to paint it and you don't have the money, then don't paint it and just play with the gray plastic models. Because at the end of the day, as long as you are enjoying the hobby, it's a successful day. Now, there might be people that might not want to play with you because they don't want to play with unpainted models against them, and that's a whole nother issue. But at that point, you and that person are probably not meant to be playing with each other because there's a gap between what you enjoy and what they enjoy, and that gap leaves a middle ground where you're not going to enjoy each other's company doing the same thing because of the fact that you have that gap between what you want to do and what you want to put into it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You will find someone that will be fine playing with your gray plastic, and there will be find someone who will paint up an army to play against you. Both people will find their happy place. They'll find their person that they can go and play and enjoy with. But there should not be any expectations on what to do it. So if you do not enjoy painting, don't worry about it. But if there's anxiety about painting, if you haven't tried it, if you haven't done it at all, or if you do enjoy it but you still find yourself unable to paint, then that becomes an issue. Because now anxiety is holding you back from doing something that you could probably really enjoy. Now, there are a lot of excuses people give about why they don't want to do it, and the point at which anxiety kind of takes over and prevents them from doing something has a lot of allies in that fight. The one that you usually hear is, oh, I'm not good enough to paint this model. If I paint this model, I'm just going to ruin it. It's not going to look good. I can't see myself being able to accomplish this. And at that point, that is self-doubt that's talking to you, and it is not the reality of the situation. Because any paint job looks better than bare plastic. And I'm sure there are plenty of paint jobs out there that look better than other paint jobs. I mean, even in my own experience as a painter, I have paint jobs that look better than other paint jobs. But I've always enjoyed my paint jobs better than I have the bare plastic. Because at the end of the day, there's some color on it. There's some definition to it. It looks interesting. And that is anxiety holding you back from doing something that you will inevitably enjoy. Because having a painted army on the table feels good. It's fun to play with. You know, since I've been doing this channel, since I've been going to tournaments and stuff, having a painted army has always been something I've enjoyed doing and having and playing with. So if you're letting anxiety hold you back from achieving that, even if you're just looking to game with it, it's holding back your enjoyment of the hobby. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is enhancing your enjoyment. So if something like painting can enhance your enjoyment of playing the game, then even if you say you are just a player, if you're just here for the gaming aspect of it, you're letting painting, your anxiety about painting, cut back the amount of enjoyment that you could have simply as a gamer. Because playing with a fully painted army, like I said, is a lot of fun, and it really enhances the enjoyment of the game. And again, like I said, if you don't like painting, there are workarounds. There's ways to go about it. There's also how much effort you need to put into a model to make it worth it. This is a simple process I'm about to do here. It's a rattle can of Army Painter color primer and just my model. It's pretty simple. That's done. Primed blue. Looks cool. And it looks better than gray plastic. And it's something that literally anyone can do. I mean, I guess if you have a physical disability, this might be limiting, but then you can get someone who you know who would be generous enough to lend you, 3 minutes of their time to come spray a model for you. And now you have it a color. So now your army, even on the tabletop, is distinct from the tide of gray that they talk about. and you just have a little bit of color. That's all it took. You know, this is not going to get you into a tournament that has a painting requirement, but if you're just looking to play, suddenly now I've taken away your inability to play with it, and now it's enhanced your gaming experience by a little bit of paint. So if your anxiety is about looking worse than having the gray plastic, that's already taken care of. Now, you can go further, obviously, and I will go further with this myself. But at the end of the day, now it's a painted model. It's something that looks kind of cool. I can have it on the table. It looks distinct from all the other gray plastic, and it's mine. And that's took 5 minutes of my time to paint it and make it look different. Oftentimes, and in my case, the reason we have this gray plastic and the anxiety that we have about it goes deeper than just not thinking that our models are going to look better than gray plastic, or going to look worse than gray plastic. Now, a lot of people talk about how they're worried that when they start painting, they're going to get better, and then the models that they paint now will not be usable because they're going to look so different from their other ones. And quite frankly, if you're just playing for fun, who cares? But also, as long as they're close enough, they're going to look totally fine on the battlefield. This right there is one of my earlier Dark Angel models I painted. It's painted with craft paint. It's got different basing down over here. It's a little bit sloppy. I did a pretty good job. I concentrated on neatness to make sure it works, but it's nothing special. But it is painted, and essentially what it was just a base coat and then a wash. Nowadays, here's my regular line trooper. In my opinion, much better. More details are picked out, smoother finishes. Essentially a similar style, but very different. My first models were painted with craft paint, the kinds you just get at Michael's or Walmart. This one was painted with army painter paints, which are model painting paints. And the finish is different, they look different, but I use them on the tabletop the same way, together, because why not? They look close enough that, especially from arm's distance length away, no one's going to really notice. Sure, the craft paint one is much shinier than the army painter one, but at the end of the day, who cares? Especially if I don't care. And if someone else cares, I mean, that becomes their problem, not mine. So, even though I've gotten better, even though I progressed, I can still use my models that I painted way back when. And they work. Because it's my hobby, and I'm going to play with them as I want. And in fact, I've used them in battle reports, and people don't really notice the difference. Unless you put them side by side like this, but you're not going to. You're going to have them all on a field with a whole bunch of other guys who are going to run the gambit from your first model painted to your last model painted. And no one's going to really notice the difference. So, if your models are going to look better painted, regardless of how much effort you put into them, like I showed, 3 minutes with a rattle can already looks better than bare plastic. If the progression from your first models to your last models won't prevent you from using them together on a battlefield, then what is it about the anxiety that prevents us from all having fully painted armies? And that's a hard question to answer. And it goes into the depths of what anxiety is. And it's almost undefinable what it does and the kind of hold that it has on people. If you don't deal with anxiety, if you've never dealt with anxiety, then you don't get it. And you're probably never going to get it unless you deal with anxiety. But for anyone who has dealt with anxiety, the second you start labeling these roadblocks as anxiety driven, lights start to go off and understanding starts to develop. So if you just told yourself that the model looks better as bare plastic than anything I could do, and you didn't realize that that was coming from a place of anxiety and not a place of definable fact, then you just believe it is true. But the second you label it as anxiety, you realize, oh, that's what it is. And it feels familiar because it's something that if you're dealing with anxiety, you've probably faced in other aspects of your life, not just model painting. And you realize that it's not based in reality, that a lot of these things are. It's all the force of our own minds controlling us. And that doesn't necessarily make it easy to overcome, even though it's identified. Anxiety is a thing that you fight and if you deal with it on a daily basis, you fight it to get over things. So whether it's you looking at a sink full of dishes and being overwhelmed by how much it is, and therefore you just balance the cup on top of that pot, as opposed to just doing the dishes, that was going to take you 15 minutes to put them into a dishwasher, or whether it's staying with an entire pile of unbuilt models and kits because you're worried about whether or not you're going to be able to accomplish it. All of it is the power of the mind controlling us. And there's no easy way to overcome it. There's no quick fix to it. There's no just, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's a process of trying to get over it. And like I said, identifying these problems and identifying these issues are the first step. So what I'm talking about today is not the final end-all be-all answer to these problems. It is a step towards finding an answer. Oh yes. So if that's not the answer, and it's obvious that I don't have those hiccups of not wanting to have models that are older painted to ones that are newer painted, and I don't think that the gray plastic looks better than my paint jobs, then what is the answer? And what is it that's holding people back like me from wanting to do projects, wanting to paint models? And like I said, anxiety is a hard thing to wrap your head around. Even someone who suffers from it, even people who suffer from it, have a hard time defining it, saying what it is. It's just like a gut feeling, something inside of you that just holds tight and stops you from doing the things that you want to do. And I find myself most hooked up and most stopped from painting a model if I don't have a plan for that model. If I don't have something that I want to do with it. So if I don't have a tournament coming up that needs that model painted, if I don't have a specific purpose for showing that model, I have a hard time getting myself to paint it. Not because I don't want it painted. Obviously I bought it for a reason. But because without that artificial deadline that's placed on these kind of things, I don't have the driving force behind me to make it happen. And that's the reality of my anxiety. So while a basilisk would be great to be able to play with, I don't have a game ready for it, or a list ready for it that I need it for. Don't need it for a tournament. Having a second ATV would be great. Give me a lot more versatility in my Dark Angels lists. But I don't need it. Same thing with that unpainted Tech Marine. Be really cool. Be fun to have him, maybe run him with some, dreadnoughts and whatnot. But I don't need him. And because of that, my mind goes, there's got to be something else that you could be doing that needs to be done. Something else that could be helping you, helping your family, that could be helping whatever's happening, that you should be working on instead. And oftentimes, there isn't. I handle the things I need to for my family, I handle the things I need to for myself, and then I have a lot of time that gets filled up with the endless void of dread. Thinking that I should be doing something, but unable to define what that something should be. And that keeps me from working on projects that would be fun to have done, that'd be fun to do, that'd be fun to complete. And I stop myself. My brain stops myself. And it sucks. And it's something that I deal with on a daily basis with everything that I do. Most of the things that you see that are completed are because I put a deadline on it. So I said, I'm going to have these Void Scar done for a kill team that I'm going to be playing next week. So I want to put it out in a battle report. I've got an army that I need to put together, a list that I need to put together. Let me put that out. When we had the COVID lockdown, I had less of that urge because there were no games, there was nothing going on. And for a while, the thing that I had to do was keep myself from going insane, which was building and painting models. And I had a whole lot in 2020 I built and painted in that time. But even with that going on, there eventually came a point where I was like, why are you painting this? What's this for? And my anxiety took over and said, there must be something else you could be doing. And instead I just sat on my desk and watched YouTube, did nothing. So, I'm going to try to change that. And I'm going to start building and painting more for myself and to overcome this roadblock that I have in front of me. And you should too. If you are out there and you are suffering from anxiety and you're suffering from problems that are keeping you from doing what you want to in this hobby, name them. Face them. Understand them. And then do what you can to try to handle them. And get people's help. Tell your friends. Be like, I have this problem. I can't get these things done on my own time, on my own volition. I need help. Maybe they can help. Maybe they'll say, I want to see that tank on the table 3 weeks from now when we play on Saturday. And now you have something to latch onto, to hold onto, to get yourself to do it. And the reality with a lot of this is you have to fake it till you make it. So that you have to fake the drive until the drive actually comes. And that's something I'm going to do. So in fact, I used this video as a reason to build and prime that model. You know? And I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to finish it, I'm going to build it and paint it. And from here on out, I'm going to build and paint it because I want to. And I've always wanted to, and I keep wanting to. But each step that's in front of me before I can actually make it to fruition is more things for my anxiety to latch onto to keep me from doing it. So the model is just in a box on my shelf. There's a whole lot of steps between that and having it in a battle report or having it in a game. But then when I take it off the shelf and I build it, that's one less step that my anxiety has to latch onto. Now he's primed. Even less steps. And once he's primed, from there it becomes a lot easier for me to envision a completed model. I've got a couple more base coats, a wash, and a dry brush, and we're good to go. That's the process that I have for my Astra Militarum vehicles. I know it's easy, especially once I get to that point. So it's all about finding ways to go forward, finding ways to move forward, finding ways to get over that anxiety hump that's preventing you from enjoying the hobby. So for me, it's forcing things like this, making myself do that first step, because once that first step is done, I know my anxiety loses its grip real quick. And I can steamroll and roll it into the next thing and the next thing and make it all happen. And maybe yours is less so. Maybe it's going to take more effort for you. Maybe you have to build that model and stare at it as gray plastic for a bit. And then you force yourself to prime it. You stare at it again. Put on some base coats, stare at it. Wash it, stare at it, dry brush, and then you're done. But it took a lot more effort to get it done. In which case, I hear you. I see you. I feel you. I've been there, and I am there very often. So I'm not saying this is easy. I know from just my sheer fact that it's not easy. But I also know that it's possible to handle. I know it's able to be overcome. And if you're watching this and none of this sounds familiar to you, none of this seems like relatable at all, then I'm glad for you. I really am. But understand that there's a lot of people out there that are not as blessed to have that ability and do face these things. And also identifying those roadblocks in and of itself is not the answer. It still takes a lot of effort to get over them. So like I said, if your anxiety is holding you back because you don't think you're a good enough painter to paint the models that you own that are yours and are not someone else's, then I feel for you. Understand that factually that's not the case. Factually that's not true. But I also know that the fact that it's factually not true doesn't change your reality and your experience with it. If you think that your models are going to look better as gray plastic than painted, it's not true. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel true to you. And I understand that, and I feel that. If you're afraid, if things are holding you back, if you have this demon inside of your mind holding you back, understand that I feel you. I see you. I understand you. And it's something that I deal with as well. And it's something I fight with as well. I have a lot of painted models. And if I'm being honest, none of them came easy. They all took a lot of just mental fortitude to make happen, let alone the physical labor of actually painting them. Because quite frankly, that's far lower than the emotional labor of getting them painted. So I feel you, and I understand you, and I hear you. It's the reason that I had an airbrush for years that just sat collecting dust and not getting used. It's the reason I have just a metric boatload of unbuilt models. It's the reason that sometimes my lists look very similar, because I haven't gotten around to painting or building the other ones, because I've had a 2,000 point list, so I don't even have that to drive me. So I hear you, I understand you, and I feel you. And I want you to know that I'm fighting along with you, and that together we can make this hobby something that we want it to be, and we can enjoy this hobby the way we want to enjoy it. And I know you can do it. And there's a part of me that knows I can do it too. So I hope this helped you. And I hope this helps drive you forward further. And if you don't yourself feel these things, maybe look for it in your friends, in your group of friends. Because I guarantee you that there's statistically someone in that group that's going to be feeling this. And perhaps you just reaching out and saying, I understand, might be enough to help them get past that block that they have. Or at least be a little bit of help in dealing with that block. So I hope you guys, I don't think it's quite enjoyed this, but maybe I hope you learned something. I hope you felt something. I hope you were able to build from something with this. And I've been Phil, the Glacial Geek, as always. And until next time, stay safe, you're enough, and have fun.